Robert Logan Scott was a Scottish immigrant who arrived in America and quickly carved out a prosperous life on the harsh Utah frontier. By his late 20s, he had secured a highly lucrative position as a railroad section boss. Earning $10 a day in the 1880s gave him massive financial leverage and industrial authority over a growing crew. He used that wealth to establish a thriving homestead in Millard County. His first wife, Catherine, raised their growing family on a large farm surrounded by heavy black workhorses and massive alfalfa harvests. Then, in 1887, Robert took a 14-year-old girl named Rosilla as a second wife. The timing was terrible. The United States government was actively hunting down polygamists, deploying federal marshals to scour the western valleys in horse-drawn buggies. His religious defiance backed him into a corner. To avoid a federal prison sentence, he had to abandon his secure railroad job, forfeit his $10 a day income, and walk away from his hard-won financial empire. Robert took to peddling goods from a covered wagon, constantly dodging the law. The ongoing evasion rapidly drained their savings, pushing the family toward financial ruin. To permanently escape the marshals, Robert fled south into the newly formed religious colonies of northern Chihuahua, Mexico. His wives and children soon followed, enduring a brutal, multi-stage journey to join him. When the family reunited, they found a grim reality. Robert had secured housing, but it consisted of a single adobe room with a fireplace and a flimsy lumber lean-to kitchen. 10 people were crammed in this primitive space. The squalor quickly turned fatal. The rented house was infected with diphtheria. Several of the children contracted the disease, and Robert's young daughter Anne died before they could even establish a permanent home. Robert had successfully outrun the jurisdiction of the United States government, but his freedom was purchased with his daughter's life and his family's rapid descent into extreme poverty. The Mexican colonies were unforgiving. Building a functional town out of the dry, dusty landscape required back-breaking labor and constant ingenuity from every settler. Robert actually possessed the raw talent for this environment. He was incredibly versatile, capable of plastering, carpentry, running the local cannery, making his own tin cans, and even singing opera with a clear, high-tenor voice. His most complex project was an impromptu pleasure resort near a bend in the river. To support it, he engineered a subterranean ice house, digging below ground level and framing it with double walls. He filled the space between those walls with loose sawdust, creating a powerful thermal barrier. During cold winter evenings, his children harvested river ice and packed it into this insulated vault, keeping the blocks frozen solid well into the intense heat of May. With this reliable supply of ice, his wives baked ginger snaps and churned fresh ice cream, selling the treats to crowds at town dances right on the edge of the Mexican frontier. He was undeniably brilliant at creating these complex novelties. Yet, while he built rowboats and underground freezers, he entirely neglected to secure a steady income to put daily meals on the table for his 10 dependents. Robert developed an intense paranoia regarding the strict rules of the colony. He deeply resented the local church leaders, mocked them as the powers that be, and absolutely refused to take a steady, paying job under their authority. This stubbornness forced a brutal role reversal. Facing starvation, his 14-year-old son, Jim, had to drop out of the 7th grade and take a grueling job at the local grist mill. Jim's tiny wages became the family's lifeline. That young boy provided the flour, the sugar, the chicken feed, and even the cloth to make clothing for his mothers and siblings. While his teenage son ground wheat to keep the family alive, Robert spent his days armed with a pick and shovel, manually digging a massive, completely unnecessary road straight up a nearby hill. He poured all his physical energy into this dead-end project. The rest of the colony saw exactly what was happening, openly mocking the useless excavation as Scott's folly. He maintained a rigid, unyielding grip over his household, demanding absolute obedience. Yet he completely abandoned the basic duty of keeping those same people fed and clothed. Eventually, the situation fractured his household. Unable to tolerate his brooding tyranny and his refusal to work, both of his wives reached their limits. While he was away, his first wife moved out with the children, and his second wife temporarily fled back to Utah. He had uprooted his life to join a frontier society explicitly designed to elevate and protect polygamist patriarchs, but his behavior was so extreme that his own wives chose to abandon him anyway. Any chance of reconciliation was erased by the 1912 Madero Revolution. The sudden threat of military violence forced the entire colony into a panicked, immediate evacuation back to the United States. At 59 years old, Robert found himself fleeing for his life. Having never learned to ride a horse, he crossed the border with only a quilt thrown over an animal's back for a saddle. The religious haven he sought was gone. The plural family he had sacrificed his wealth to build was shattered. He returned to American soil with absolutely nothing. Robert spent his final years back in Utah. His youngest daughter took pity on him, providing him with a small, isolated house and a tiny workshop on her property. He lived out his remaining decades entirely to himself. He spent his days puttering with hand tools and filling notebooks with rhymes and religious poetry. He possessed a brilliant engineering mind, a strong work ethic, and artistic talent, attributes that once earned him vast respect and wealth. But it all contracted into a solitary existence in a backyard shed. Robert Logan Scott proved that immense capability and deep religious conviction are not enough on their own. When poisoned by unyielding pride and a refusal to adapt, those traits do not build a lasting dynasty. They only leave behind the fragments of a broken family.